Thank you. The Honourable John Ruddick.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Minister.
Morning, Mr. Ruddick.
Under the Local Government Act, you do have there's two categories of when you have concerns about a council. You can issue a performance improvement order, or you can order a new administrator to the council. So for the more egregious dysfunction that could be happening, are there guidelines as to determine what's the difference between a performance improvement order and appointing an administrator?
Well, the power to appoint an administrator under the Act isn't available for me just to do, or for a minister just to do, probably rightfully so. So that you have to go through a process of undertaking an investigation under Section 430 of the Local Government Act. And the process usually involves a preliminary investigation, then a Section 430 investigation, and then a determination as to the minister has power to suspend a council for then 3 months, with an extension for 3 months, but you can't sack a council in effect without a public inquiry.
But what about the performance improvement orders? That is something at your discretion, is that correct?
Yeah, performance improvement order is an order in which you can, if the council's not doing something that they're supposed to do, they're acting either improperly or unlawfully or in breach of some statutory requirement. There's a process whereby you can give them a draft performance improvement order, ask them to respond, and then make a permanent improvement order. If a permanent performance improvement order, if you make such an order and they fail to do so, there's a convoluted process of which ultimately you can then take some action. If you'd like it in some detail, I can give Mr. Whitworth.
Are there guidelines for what would trigger a performance improvement order?
Guidelines. Are there guidelines?
Minister, we have a procedural framework for performance and suspension orders, which is not a guideline for councils in terms of how they would behave, but they are certainly guidance to us on how we would go about getting a consistent approach procedurally to addressing a particular issue with the council and making a decision as to whether we would go performance improvement order or direct to a public inquiry. I would also just add that when the legislation was created to introduce the performance improvement order process, it was posited on the basis that it would be, I suppose, an escalation, and the point of being a regulator is to escalate the action depending on the severity of the issue.
So if I gave you an example, if there was a situation where the state government has agreed to give a local council some funding for disaster recovery for critical infrastructure, and then so you've given the council the money, then the council doesn't spend it and returns it to you, and the infrastructure doesn't get built. Now, every other council I know is out there desperate for state government money. So would something like that, where it does seem like it's internal incompetence, would that be something that could trigger the considering of issuing a performance improvement order?
Minister, if you're happy for me, I would say no. In fact, I think we have given evidence previously that we have actually asked for money back from councils where they haven't completed a particular project in time. And it would also depend on the nature of the reason why the project couldn't be delivered. We'd hate to see something half-built. If the council is identifying that there is a reason why they can't complete that infrastructure, then it's actually probably beneficial to return the money so that we can provide it to, some other more, deliverable project.
Well, then could I bring up the example of the flood-exposed strategic planning in the Hawkesbury? Now, we know that there's been floods there forever. Has there been any consideration in the Office of Local Government that there needs to be closer ministerial supervision of what's going on there?
Sorry, Mr. Ruddick, but that's sort of confusing the role of the Office of Local Government with the role of planning under the Department of Planning, Housing and Infrastructure. I do know a lot about flooding in the Hawkesbury, but that's because I was previously a Deputy Secretary in Planning. I'm not sure what the question is in relation to council administration.
Okay, well, I understand that funding was provided, but then it was returned because it just wasn't delivered. Now, the locals, I understand, were very keen to have that funding delivered, the flood mitigation. But then the locals are very upset because it's not happening because the money's been returned to the government. But if I could go back to the Minister, if a council has not progressed a comprehensive local environment plan update for more than a decade, would that trigger any type of concern within your portfolio?
The concern would be a planning concern for the Planning Minister. I have had discussions with the Planning Minister about how we can use provisions under the Local Government Act to encourage councils to be more efficient and effective in respect of their planning work, because whilst the Planning Minister controls the Environmental Planning Assessment Act and the provisions they're under, their only power other than that, apart from removing matters from the council, is appointing a planning administrator. So I've had some discussion with the Planning Minister because through my work, for example, in meeting and visiting councils and dealing with them in terms of their management and administration, I'm coming across examples where some really switched on general managers have come across solutions to reduce substantially development application delays. So I've had discussions with the Planning Minister and I know Mr Whitworth has also been having some discussions with some general managers about ways in which we can formulate a management structure that can aid the Planning Minister and the efficiencies of councils dealing with DAs. There's some really clever examples that I've come across as I've moved through, particularly rural New South Wales. They're the ones that seem to do it really well.
So, Minister, if there is a council with a pattern of returned funding, delayed statutory planning, contested executive appointments and stored resilient infrastructure, at what point does the office determine that systematic governance intervention may be required?
I think the test would be that probably if they were so hopeless that that there were such major failings that would require us to do something, that there would have to be at a pretty high bar, I think, Mr Ruddick, because they are the third tier of government. They are democratically elected. If their performance is poor, it's for the public to judge and replace them. So I've been actually trying to get the state out of local government affairs, and I've been trying to depoliticise the approach. That's why most of the reforms that have taken place, nearly all of them over the last 3 years, have been done on a bipartisan basis, not only with the support of the opposition, but usually improved by the opposition. So, you know, I'm reluctant to, whenever I or the OLG interfere, it's not political, and it's because we have to, or there's been some statutory breach.
Has Hawkesbury City Council been subject to any formal performance monitoring in the last couple of years?
Not that I know of. Do you know, Mr Whitworth?
No.
There's something on my list.
I mean, we can take on notice whether we have made any preliminary inquiries with that council, but it's not subject to any Section 430 investigations. So I don't. Sorry, I've been reminded by Ms Hickey that there is a particular councillor that has been suspended from that council because of a criminal charge that they are currently facing, which related to their function as a councillor.
Thank you. And look, my last question is, if there is a council where everything's working fine except that the planning functions are persistently delayed or impaired, does the Minister have the power to appoint a planning administrator?
No, the Planning Minister has power to appoint a Planning Minister.
I see. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Minister, if I could return to the